What's going on, everyone? You are welcome to Web Chrony Online YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we will create this beautiful to-do list app using HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Before we go down to business, let us take a moment to walk through this app to see how it performs and what you are going to be doing at the end of this tutorial. So as you can see from here, we have a very beautiful user interface with some tags listed right here. As you can see from the screen, we have one of the tags with a line through it which indicates that the task has been completed. So let me just quickly walk you through how this app works. Now if I want to add a new task, I will just have to click on this icon to pop up the new task form. So now I can add a new task. For example, I can say call my friend. Okay, and let me set a date. I click on this icon, then the calendar will show up. I would like to call my friend tomorrow, so I'll select tomorrow's date, and the time I can go ahead and select, let's say 10 o'clock AM, like this. And once I click add task, the task will be added to the list. We are persisting the data in the local storage, so even if I refresh the page, I still have my data intact. Now if for some reason I do not wish to have a particular task on the list, I can just click on this delete icon here. There will be a dialog to warn me that this action will delete the task. If I go ahead and click OK, now the task will be gone. If I am done with a particular task, I can just click on this icon. It will ask for confirmation that this action will change the completion status of the task, and once I click OK, the icon here will change and there will be a line through the task. Okay, and if I do not wish to have this particular task on my list, it's just a matter of clicking on this icon, confirming by clicking OK, and the task will be gone. Now this app looks very beautiful on the desktop, but it looks even much beautiful on a smaller screen. So for example, if I click on the F12 and it shows the mobile version of this app, this is how this beautiful app looks on iPhone 6, iPhone 7 or iPhone 8 Plus. Once I click on this icon, the dialog form will come, and if I do not wish to add any task, I can just go ahead and click on this times icon to close the dialog box. Now I would like to add a new task. So for example, the task I would like to perform is to subscribe to Web Chrony Online. Okay, now when do I want to do it? I want to do it today. And what time do I want to do it? Let's say 5:20 p.m. like this. And once I click add task, the task will be added. If I'm already subscribed, I will click on this, and once I confirm, it will strike through it and indicate that the task has been completed. Ladies and gentlemen, this app looks very simple, but there are a lot of logics that go into it, and you will learn a whole lot of things as we build this app together. For the sake of people who might be beginners, I will take you through the creation of this app step by step, little by little, taking my time to explain every little thing. In view of this, there is no more time to waste. Let's begin. But before we do that, please make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and if you haven't, click on the subscribe button to do so now. Leave a like on this video if you are enjoying it so far, and leave a comment if you have any problem or recommendation for the next project. Now let's begin. Okay guys, so I already have my Visual Studio Code up and running, and since I've already created the app, I'll go ahead and create new different files, which will be the file we will be working on. Okay, so I'll come here and click on this icon to open the Explorer. I'll go ahead and create my to-do.html, to-do.css and to-do.js. So let's do that. To-do.html, to-do.css, and finally I'll create the to-do.js. so to-do.js. okay, so first and first, inside of the to-do.html, I will type the exclamation mark. If you are using Visual Studio Code, the Emmet abbreviation is a very good way to save some time. So once the exclamation mark is typed and then the Emmet abbreviation is on, I'll hit enter for this template to be pre-populated into the todo.html for me. Now first and first, I'll change the title of this web page to Web Cronny To Do App. Okay, now I'll go ahead and link my CSS to the HTML and also my JavaScript. So I will type here link and hit enter, and because the todo.css is a neighbor to the todo.html, I'll just bring a / and then type todo.css. Now I would like to have my JavaScript inside the body tag of the HTML. So right here I will type script for a script tag to be opened for me. Inside of the opening tag I will type src, and the src will point to the JavaScript file, which is the todo.js. Again, because the todo.js is a neighbor of the todo.html, I'll bring a / type my todo and select the g.js. Okay, so now the JavaScript file and the CSS file have been successfully linked to the HTML file. Now let's go through the app and then see what we will be doing. Okay guys, so we will have a main container, okay, and inside the main container we will have a top bar. Inside the top bar there will be a left container and a right container. The left container will contain this icon and the title or the text here, and then the right container will contain these two icons. Okay, after this container we will have this task container, and inside the task container we will have a title, and then each task will be created, and afterwards we will create this beautiful button, and after creating the button we will also create this beautiful form. Okay, so now let's begin. Okay guys, so as you can see from the project, we have some icons here, and the way we add icons is to add a CDN and then go to the icons website, get their snippet, and then paste it inside of our HTML file. Okay, so I'll open a new tab and then type cdnjs.com and hit enter. Once it is opened, the icon that I'll be using is Font Awesome. So I'll type here Font Awesome, and as the Font Awesome comes, I will click on the second icon here which says copy link tag. Once I click for the link tag to be copied, I will come here under the title of the web page and paste the link tag down here. Okay, so now we can use our icons. Now we are done with the CDN.js, so we have to open the web page of the Font Awesome website. Okay, so I'll hit enter for the Font Awesome website to be opened, and for example let me just type something like search. Okay, and then click on the free one. Once I click on the magnifying glass here, the snippet is down here, so as I click it will be copied, and when I paste the snippet inside of my body tag, then it will be showed right here. Okay, so before I do that, I will have to go live on this. In the meantime, let me just close this one and then go live one more time. Okay guys, so as you can see we have it right here. If you don't have the go live option here in your Visual Studio Code, bring your cursor to this extension menu and click it. Once you have it, type live server into the search, and once it comes, click on install to install it, and afterwards everything will be okay for you, right? Great. So let's begin. Now let me show you the app one more time. We have the main container. Inside the main container we have a top container, so let's do just that. In the meantime, I will clear this one away, and then I will create my main container, and then hit enter. Inside the main container I will create my top bar, so top bar, and then hit enter. inside the top bar we will have our top bar left and then top bar right. So let's do just that. Top bar left. Under the top bar left, let me go ahead and create the top bar right. So top bar right, okay, like this. Great. So inside the top bar left, let me show you quickly. We will have this particular icon and then the text which says web cronny to do. So let me just go to the Font Awesome website and then type here task. Okay, so this is the icon that I'm looking for. I'll click on it like this and then click to copy the snippet. So inside here I will paste it here and I'll have an H1 with the class name logo text. Okay, and inside this logo text we have the text web cronny to do. Okay, like this, and then save. Now let's come back here to the main app. At the right side we have this icon and then this icon. So let's do just that. I will come here and then type search, and then this is the one that I'm looking for. So I'll click on it. I'll click to copy the snippet, and inside the top bar right I will paste this one right here, and the second one will be the vertical dot. So let me just type dot here, and then this is the one that I'm looking for. It's called ellipsis vertical. I'll click on it. I'll click on it and then paste it right here and save. Okay, so now let's have a look at what we have done so far. It doesn't look anything like what we want, but then let's do that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to go to the todo.css like this, and the first thing that I'm going to do is to have a default style for all the elements. And you know how we do it. We type the asterisk, which is a representation of every element in the HTML web page. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is to set the margin to 0 so that it will remove every default margin that has been assigned by the browser to particular element. Okay, I will also set padding to 0. I will set box sizing to border box, and the reason is that we want paddings to be calculated within the dimensions of certain containers. So for example, if I have a container with a height of 40 pixels and a weight of, let's say, 60 pixels, if I set padding of 10 pixels, it will be within the dimensions that have been set for this particular container. Okay, now the next thing that I'm going to do is that I want the color to be white. As you can see from here, the color is white, right? So I will set color to white. Okay, and then the next thing that I'm going to do is to start the main container. Okay, so let's do just that. I'll just copy the main container from here and then paste it here. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is to set it to a weight of 100 VW, and what I mean is that I want this container to take all the space available to it. Okay, then I want a height also of 100 VH, which is view height. Okay, now I will set a background color. For the sake of time, I'll be copying the color codes, so I'll just type here BG, hit enter, and then paste the color code right here. So now let's see. Very good. So the next thing we are going to do is to start the top bar, okay, and make it look very beautiful. So let's do just that. So I'll come to the todo.html. I'll copy the top bar, and then the first thing that I'm going to do is to make sure that the top bar has a weight of the entire screen. Okay, so I'll set weight to 100%. I will set display to flex. I will set flex items, so align items to the center, and then I will set justify content to space between. So now let me show you what is happening here. So the display flex will make sure that the items are on side by side, okay, and the justify content set to space between means that they should be pushed to the edges, okay, and then the align item center means that they should all be on the same line in the horizontal manner, okay. The top bar has a different background color, so let's do just that. So I will set the height of the top container to 60 pixels. I will set padding to 0 top and bottom, and then 20 left and right, okay. And then the background color of the top bar is different from the normal one, so I'll just type background color and then paste the color code right here, okay. So that is it. Now let's see. Okay, so let's go ahead and work on the separate containers inside of the top bar. So I'll come here and then copy the top bar left. This is a container, okay. So I'll come here and set a display of flex. I'll set a align items to the center, and I'll give it a gap of 10 pixels, okay. Now what I've done here, let's see. Okay, so it's right here. What I've done here, I want the same thing for the one at the right. So instead of copying the right corner and doing it a separate way, I can just copy it from here like this. Then I'll bring a comma, a period, and then paste it right here, and they will share the same style, okay. So yeah, that is it. Now the next thing to do is to change the font width and then the font family of this particular text. So let's do just that. So I'll come here, and that one has a class name of logo text. I'll copy logo text from here, and then I will paste logo text down here. I'll change the font width to 300. I want it to be very light, and the font size, I want it to be 1.4 rem, okay. So now let's save and look at what we have done so far, okay. So let's compare. I think we are done with the top bar. Now the next thing to do is to work on the remaining part. All right, let's go on. Okay guys, so now that we are done with the top bar, I think it is time for us to work on the remaining part of the screen, okay. So immediately under the top bar, I will create a new container called to do container. Now inside this container, I will have an h1 with class name of to do title, and then the text inside is my success list. Now after creating this, I will create another container called to do items container. So I'll create my to do items container, okay. All right, so the spelling should be correct in order to avoid any trouble, okay, like this. And inside this container, I'll create a sub container which will be a to do item, okay. So to do item, and then hit enter. Now inside this to do item, let me show you real quick. In the main project, this is the to do item, the one with a different background, okay. So the to do item contains an icon here, the task details here, and a delete icon here. So let's do just that. So I'll have my first icon. In the meantime, let me copy the icon from Font Awesome, and the icon is called circle, okay. So let me just click here to copy the snippet, and then I'll paste the circle right here. After the circle, I'll create another container called to do task container, okay. So to do task container, okay. and inside this container we will have an h1 with the class name of task, and then let's just generate some random text of about 8 words. Hit enter. So after the h1 I will create another container called task details, and this task details will contain the date and then the time. So I'll create a span, give it a class name of task date. Okay, and then let me just put something random here. So 12, and then I'll create another span, give it a class name of task time, and then let's say 12 o'clock p.m. okay, like this, and save. Now outside of this task container I'll create the icon. Okay, make sure that the icon comes after this particular div. Okay, so out of the div I will create an icon, but then I'll fetch the icon from the font awesome, and the icon that I'm looking for is the delete icon. Okay, so I'll come here and then type delete, and this is the icon that I'm looking for. I'll click on it and then click to copy the snippet, and then I will paste it right here and save. Okay, so now let's have a look at what we have done so far and begin the styling. Okay, so we have all that we need. Now let's begin to style. Okay guys, so let's quickly look at the original project and then see what we are going to do now. So we want this one to be in the center, and then the rest will follow. Afterwards we will create this button. Okay, so let's do just that. Now I will copy the to do container from here, and inside of my CSS I will paste it here. Now the first thing that I want to do is to set a weight of 100%. okay, this is very important. Now after setting the width I will set a height, but then I will just use the calc method. I'll subtract the height of the top bar from 100 VH so that the rest will be given to the to do container. Okay, so let's do just that. So 100 VH minus 60 pixels. Okay, so now that we have this, the next thing I'm going to do is to set the display to flex, but then the flex direction will be column, and then I will set a gap of 12 pixels. The next thing that I'm going to do is to style this title. So I'll copy this title from here and then I'll paste it here. So the first thing I want to do is to give a font weight of 300 so that the text will be lighter. I'll change the font family to sans serif, and then I want it to be at the center, so I'll set align self to the center. Okay, and then I'll change the font size to 1.4 rem. Then finally I'll give a padding top of 20 pixels. So now let's see. Okay, good. Now let's deal with the next one in the next thing in the line. So it's going to be the to do items container. I'll copy it from here and then paste it here. Now the first thing that I want to do is to set a weight of 100%. okay, afterwards I will set the display to flex, but the flex direction will be set to column. Now after setting that, I'll give a height of 100%. I want it to take the remaining space available to 8, and I'll give it a padding of 10. Let's make it 15 pixels. Okay, now after this, let's give a gap of 12 pixels and then save. Now let's see. Okay, now the pattern has been added successfully. Now let's deal with the to do item. Okay, so I'll come here and then copy the to do item from here, and then I will paste it here. First and first, I want it to take a weight of 100%. I'll set the display to flex. Okay, Now what I'm going to do next is to give it a different background color. So I'll set the background, but I'll copy color code, and this time around I want it to have a box sizing of content box instead of border box. Okay, so let's set box sizing to content box. I'll set a padding of 10 pixels, and then I'll give a border radius of 10 pixels. Now let's see. Okay, everything looks all right, but I don't want to scroll on the side. Okay, so what do I do then? Inside of the to do items container, I will set the overflow X, which is the one on the side. Okay, scrolling on the side, to hidden. Okay, and I will set overflow Y to scroll. In the meantime, I have to make sure that the scrolling only occur here, okay, not on the full page. So I will come to the main container, and then I will set the overflow to hidden. It doesn't matter whether horizontal or vertical. So now let's see. Okay, so as you can see, now the scroll is within the items container. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is to make sure that this button here is at the corner, right? So let's do just that. In the meantime, let's see. We have to set align items to the center, just to make sure that everything is aligned in the center. So let's do just that. In here, under the display flex, I'll set AIC to center. Okay, now I want to give a gap between the icon here and the text here. So let's see. As you can see, they are just right there. So let's give a gap of 10 pixels. Okay, so because I want this icon to be at this point, I will have to give the position of this container relative, so that I can set that I want to absolute. So let's do just that, position relative. Okay, now I will come here and now copy the FA trash, which is the icon. Okay, and then come here, paste it right here, and then I'll set a position to absolute. So position set to absolute, and then I want it from the right at 10 pixels. Okay, so I'll just save like this. Now let's see. Okay, it is right here. Okay, now this thing I don't really like it, so what I want to do is that I want to set the display of this scroll to none. Okay, so let me just come here immediately under the main container. I will type scroll bar. So this is it, WebKit scroll bar, and I'll set the display to none. Okay, so now let's see. Okay, now it is gone. Okay, good. What I'm going to do next is that I have to make sure that there is a padding here, but then I'll have to change the font size here and also do with this one. So let's do just that. I will come to this place and copy the task, and with the task I want the task to have a font weight of 300. I want a font size of 1.2 rem. I want white space set to no wrap. I will explain this to you in a moment. And I want text overflow set to ellipsis. Okay, and I will also set overflow to hidden. I will explain this to you in a moment. Okay, in the meantime, we have to deal with the task container, which is this one. Okay, so I'll just copy this one from here, and then up here I will just set the width. I want it to take a weight of about 85 pixels. Okay, sorry, 85%, so 85p, and then hit enter like this. Now let's see. Okay, now this looks better, except that this particular pattern is not working right here. Okay, so now what we can do next is that we have to do with the task date and the task time. Okay, so let me just copy this one from here, which is the container of these two important task details. I will set the display to flex. There should be a gap of about 10 pixels between them, and the align item should be center. Now I will copy the task date from here and then paste it here. Then also I'll do same for the time, so I'll just copy this, change this one to time, and then I'll change the font size to 0.6 rem like this, and then save. Okay, so let's see. Alright, so this one, let me see. Okay, maybe it's because of this one. Now let's see. Okay, yeah, because we set the box size into content box. Okay, but then I think it looks good without it. Okay, so now let's continue. So the next thing is that I want to explain to you why the H1, which is the task, has some kind of stuff. For example, the white space is set to no wrap, text overflow is set to ellipsis, and then overflow is set to hidden. Now to explain this, suppose we have a task which is longer than the screen can accommodate, then something should happen. So for example, I come here and type lorem 50 and hit enter like this. Now let's see. You see that it will bring in some 3 dots after it has reached the maximum width of the container. Okay guys, so now we are done with the to-do container. So right after the to-do container, we will create a new container. So I'll say add to-do form, and inside this we will have an H1. So I'll add form title. Okay, and it will have the text new task like this. Then afterwards we will create input containers. Okay, so after the H1 element, I will create a new container, input container, and inside this input container I will have a label and an input. Okay, so let's do the label first. This one will be, let's look at the project one more time, the original project. It says what is to be done. Okay, so let's do just that. What is to be done. Then after this, I will create an input and give this input a class name of form input, and then I will have a placeholder. Now let's look at the placeholder here. It says enter task here, right? So let's do that, enter task here. Okay, good. Now we will duplicate this one a few more times. So I'll just copy this one and duplicate it, and this time around the label is going to be due date like this, and this time the input will have a type of date like this, and then I'll copy it one more time, and then the label will be due time. Okay, let me do the correct spellings for the date and due time. So in here the type will be time. Okay, like this. Then afterwards I'll create an add button. So immediately after the last one I will create a button, and give it a class name of add btn. Okay, and this one will have let's look at it. It will have this check icon and then the text add task. So let me quickly go here and then type check, and this is the one that I'm looking for. I'll copy it from here and then I'll paste it in here. I'll add the text add task like this. Now I'll save. Okay, so now let's go ahead and then style it. So let's look at how the original one is. It has some border radius, has some shadow around it. It has a weight of about 400 and the rest. So let's do just that. So right here I'll just copy the add to do form from here and then I'll paste it here. Now the first thing that I'm going to do is to set the width to 80% of the screen, so 80%, but then I want it to have a max width of 450 pixels, which is okay. I want it to have a background color of white. I want the border radius to be, let's say, 10 pixels. Now let's save and see. And okay, now this is not showing here, and the reason is that we have set the height of this container to take the remaining space and also set the overflow to hidden. That is why we can see it here. So if we want it to come, then we will have to bring a position of absolute, but to do that we have to also make sure that the main container has a position of relative. Okay, so let's do just that. I'll come here and set position to relative. Okay, that way I can go ahead and set a position of this one to absolute. So let's set position of this to absolute, and I will take it from the bottom. So bottom will be set to 20% from the bottom, and then from the left, let's set the left to 50%. Okay, now let's see. Okay, it is right here, but I want it at the middle. So what I'll do is that I'll use the transform method. So I'll set a transform and I want the translate, and because I didn't specify X or Y, I will have two data inside of the parenthesis. The first one will be for the left and right, and the second one will be for the top and bottom. Okay, so as I said, a 50% here, I have to set a negative 50% here followed by a comma, and because I have set bottom to 20 pixels, I have to set the second parameter to 20%. Okay, like this, and then save. So now let's see. Okay, now we have it right there. Okay, so now we can go ahead and style what is inside. So the next thing that I have to do is to set the colors of the H1 and then the labels. Okay, so let's do just that. I'll copy this one from here and then I will paste it here, and I'll bring the comma. I will also copy this one, add to do form, and then don't forget the period is very important. And then I want to target the label. Okay, so I'll type the label here and I'll set the color to gray. Okay, and save. Now let's see. Okay, so the colors are here. Now let's go ahead and style the add to do form. There is something more to be done. For example, I have to set the padding to 10 pixels, and then I have to deal with the box shadow. Okay, as you can see here, we have some box shadow. So to get a box shadow, I will head over to box shadow generator like this, and it is the first link that will come. So I'll click on it like this, and what I need to do is to make sure that I position the shadow into form that I want. So for example, I will reduce this one to be 0. I will also set this one to 0, and then I will increase this one a bit, so this one will be around 11 pesos. Then I also change this one a bit. Now I want the color to be gray, so I'll just type here the color code of gray 333 like this, and I think this is better now. So what I need to do is to copy either all of them or the first one, depending on the kind of browser you use. I would like to copy just the first one and then paste it here, okay, and save. Now let's see the result. Okay, as you can see, the shadow is right there. Now the next thing to do is to style what is inside, and the first target is going to be the art form title. So I'll copy it from here. I already have it here. I'll paste it right here, and then I'll set the font weight to 300. I'll set the font family to this one, Lucida Sans, and the rest, and then I will align at the center, so test align, set to center. I would like it to have a font size of 1.4 rem, and I'll give a margin bottom of about 10 pesos. Okay, so and now everything is okay. Now let's see. Okay, I have to also give it a text transform so that they will begin with capital letters. So let's do just that text transform. I will set a text transform to capitalize and then save. Now the next one that I'm going to target is the input container, right? So with the input container, I'll just copy it from here and then paste it here. So with the input container, I'll set the display to flex, but the flex direction will be column. Now I will set the weight to 100%. I'll give a gap of about 6 pesos, and finally I'll give margin bottom of about 14 pesos and then save. Now let's see. Okay, everything is all right. Now I have to do with the input. So as you can see, it only has border bottom. Okay, so let's do just that. So I'll come here and now copy the form input. Okay, so first thing first, with the form input, I will remove the border by setting it to none. Then I also remove the outline and then set the outline to none. Now I'll give a border bottom and set it to 1px solid gray, okay, like this, and save. Now let's see. Okay, it's good, but we should give it some padding like we did here. Okay, so let's do just that. Height of 35 pesos should do the trick for us. The input should also have a color, so let's set a color to gray, okay, like this. Now let's see. Good, everything looks better now. So what I'm going to do next is to do with this button, and as you can see from here, it takes the full width. So let me just come here and then fetch the button. So it's called the add btn. I'll copy from here. Now I'll paste it here. I'll give it a weight of 100 pesos. I'll give it a height of 35. The next thing is to give it a background color. I'll copy the color. Okay, I'll give it a color of white. I think already the color is white, so let's look at it. Well, what's going on here? Oops, we didn't paste it well. Oops, it's called add btn. Okay, so now let's see. Okay, now we have to remove the border and also give it a border radius. So now let's do just that. I said border to none, and then I'll give a border radius of about 5 pixels should do the trick for us. Now let's see. Okay, everything looks better. Let's make it a bit deeper. So let's set a font width. Font weight of about 600 should do the trick for us. Yeah, this is better. Maybe I should set the cursor to pointer. So cursor to pointer. All right, so now we are done with this, but don't forget that here there is this times icon here. Okay, we need to deal with that one. So what I'll do is that I'll head over to the font awesome, and then I will type here times, copy the S mark from here. Inside of the add form, I'll put it right here. Okay, so I'll copy this one and style it, copy it from here, and what I need to do is to set it position to absolute. So position set to absolute. I'll set the top position to about 10 pixels, and then the right set to about 20. Set color to gray like this and save, and boom, we have it right there. Okay, perhaps the top two should be 20 so that it will be even. So let's give it 20 like this. Very good. Now what we are going to do is that now that we have designed this nicely, we have to set the display to hidden and only trigger it when a button is clicked. But before then, let's just quickly create the button. Okay, so now after the add to do form here, I'll create my button. Okay, so I'll create a button and give it a class name of add to do btn like this, and this one will have an icon. Let me show you the original one. It has a plus icon, so I'll head over to the font awesome and I'll type here the plus, and then I'll copy this one from here and then I will paste it inside like this. So now let me just copy this one from here and then begin styling it. Okay, so I'll just paste this one here, and what I'll do is that I'll set a position to absolute. Now I'll take the bottom from 10 pixels, and then the left will be set to 50%. Okay, so now let's see. Okay, we have it right here, but I want it at the center. In view of that, I have to do the transform translate. Okay, transform translate, but this time I'll write to be translate s, and I'll set it to -50% like this, so that it will be at the center. Now because at this place it is a circle, I'll have to set a height, a width, and then give a border radius. Okay, so let's do just that. I will set border to none. I will have a height of 50 pixels, a width of 50 pixels, and border radius of 50% like this. Okay, and I'll give a background color of white. It's very important, so BG set to white. Now let's see. Okay, now we have to make the color of the icon different. Okay, so I'll come back here and copy this one, which is FA plus, and then I'll paste it here and then change the color. Okay, so I'll set the color. I'll copy the color from here and then paste it here. And the next thing is that I want to increase the font size a bit, so font size to 1.4 rem, and then save. What's going on here? Okay, this one should be this, and then like this. So let's see. Now everything is okay. I think the cursor of the button should also be pointer, so let's set cursor to pointer like this. Okay, so it's right here. Now what I'm going to do now is to hide this particular thing. I don't want it to show here, I have to hide it. Okay, so what I need to do is to look for the form container, okay, which is right here, okay, the add to do form, and then set the display to none like this. Okay, now it is gone. So what will happen is that we will use the JavaScript to bring it back. All right, okay guys, so we are done with the HTML and CSS, and we are moving on straight to the JavaScript. Now the first thing I want to do, I want to add a JavaScript so that when I click on this particular button, the new tax form will show. Okay, so let's do just that. So first thing first, I will just copy the class name of this button from our HTML file, and inside the JavaScript I will create a new variable called add task btn. Okay, and then I will use my document dot query selector, and because I'm selecting by the class name, I'll bring a period and then paste the class name here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to add event listener to this particular button such that when I click it, it will show the tax form. Okay, so let's do just that. Add tax btn dot add event listener. The event that I want to listen is a click event, and once this event is fired, I want to call this particular function. And what do I want the function to do? I want the function to cause this particular form. Where is the form? I want this particular form to show, so I'll just copy this particular form's class name from here, and then I will just call new task form document dot query selector, and I'm selecting by the class name, so I'll paste the class name right here. And what I want to do is that I want the new task form to have a different style, so dot style. Okay, dot the style that I want to set, as you can see from here, we set the display to none. Now I want to set the display to block. Okay, so dot display equal to block like this, and then save. Okay, so now let's go and test it out. So once I click on it like this, now the tax form is showing. Okay, so now that we have done this one, now let's do with this particular button right here to close the form in case we do not want to add a new task. All right, so back to the to-do.html, I will look for this f mark, okay, which is the times icon inside of the form, and then inside of the JavaScript file I will call for it. So close new task form btn. Okay, I should add btn equal to document dot query selector, and then I'm fetching this one by the class name. Okay, so now that I've done this, I can go ahead and add my event listener. So I'll just call the close task form btn dot add event listener. The event that I want to listen to is a click event, and then when this happens, I want to call this function, and I want the function to set the display of the form to none. Okay, so what I will do is that I'll call the new task form dot style dot display, and then set its value to none. Okay, now I know this is not going to work, okay, and I'll explain to you why in a moment. So now let's see, I click, it comes, I click, it doesn't come. And why is that? The reason is that the scope of this particular variable is within the context of a particular function and it cannot be accessed outside of that function. Okay, so if we wish this thing to work, it's either we declare this one again inside here, or we make this particular variable here a global variable. Okay, so I'll push it out of the function here and make it accessible to any function within the code. Okay, so now when I click, the tax form comes, and once I click here, it goes. Okay, so now basically we are done with this part. Okay guys, so now what we are going to do next is the addition of a new to-do list. Okay, but before I do that, let me just add some comments to be a guideline for us. Okay, so here we said get the buttons for toggling the form and add event listiness. Okay, so that is what we have done. Now what I'm going to do is to declare a variable, for to-dos, from the local storage. Okay, so let's do just that. Okay, so here I will call this variable to-do list, and then I will assign it value to a value from the local storage. But like I always say, in order to obtain data from the local storage, we have to pass it first. Okay, because before we stored it, we stringified it. So now if we want to use it, we have to pass it. In view of that, we will just bring in the JSON. JSON is all caps. Okay, dot stringify, pass, JSON dot pass. And what are we passing? We are passing the data from the local storage dot get item. The name of this item will be to do 1, and if we don't find anything, we want to assign this value to an empty array. Okay, so now what do we do next? Let's create a function that will add a new to do. So create a function that will add a new to do. Okay, let me make a task, add a new task. Okay, great. So I'll go ahead and create this function and call it add new task. Okay, and then what am I going to do? Let's first of all have our roadmap. So first of all, we will obtain values from the input. Now the next thing is that check if all input have data. Now the next thing is that if input have data, create a new task object. Afterwards, add it to the to-do list. Then afterwards, store it to local storage, and then reload the page. Okay, so reload the page, as simple as this. Okay, now let's do just that. So getting the values from the input, the first thing we need to do is to make sure that every input has an ID. So I've already done that. This input has an ID of task, this one has an ID of date, and this one has an ID of time. So if you haven't done this already, please make sure you give IDs to the input. Great. So now let's do just that. So first thing first, I will get the task and this time around I will use the document dot get element by ID, and then the ID for this one is task. Now I'll go ahead and get the date, and with the date I'll also use the document dot get element by ID. Get element by ID, and the ID here is date. But then there is a catch here. Now I want to set the value, the default value of the date to the current date. Okay, so how do we do it? We say new date, and I do not want all the date string, I just want it to have the normal date format. Okay, so I'll just say to local date string, this one, and then I'll invoke it because it is a method. Okay, now I'll do the same for the time, so I'll duplicate this one, change the name to time, and then I'll also change the ID to time, and this one, instead of to local date string, it will rather be to local time string. Okay, and don't forget it is a method, so it must be invoked. So now let's have our condition. So if into bracket we have the task, and we have the date, and we have the time, then what do we do? But then before that, let me just push everything here inside of the if and then work on the else. Okay, so else I want to send an alert, and what will this alert do? It will say please provide data for all fields. Okay, like this. Great. So what are we going to do now? If we have the data, we will create a new object. So I'll just say const new task equal to, now this task will take the task from the input, it will take the date also from the input, it will take the time from the input. We will have another one completed, and we will set a default value to false, and then time added. Okay, time added, we will set its value to new date, and then we want the to local string. Okay, now to the local string we'll take both the date and the time. Okay, so now that we have set this new task, the next thing to do is to add it to the to-do list, but this time around we want it to be the first element, and the way we do it is to use the onShift method. Okay, so I'll call my to-do list and then dot onShift, and what do I want to unshift? I want to unshift the new task. Okay, and then save like this. Now I can go ahead and store it to the local storage, so I'll just call the local storage dot set item. And what item do I want to set? I want to give it a key of to do one, just as we did for this one. Okay, I want it to have the same name so that it will override the one that we have already set. Okay, now what stringify it, because if you don't stringify it, it will not be able to store it in the local storage. So I'll bring in my JSON and I'll say dot stringify, and what do I want to stringify? I want to stringify the to-do list like this. Now after that I'll have to reload the page, so I'll call the window dot location dot reload, and it is a method, so it must be invoked. Okay, so now the function has been created successfully. Now let me walk you through this function one more time before we go ahead. So I have a function here called add new task, and what it does is that it obtains values from the input. So this is the task from the task input, date from the date input, time from the time input. Now with the with the date, we have set two options, that either it takes the value from the input. Don't forget there should be value here because we want the value inside of the input, so we have to bring value here, and there should be value here as well. Okay, great. So what is happening here is that if this particular date element doesn't have a value, we want to set its default value to new date to local date string, meaning we want today's date to be the default value. Okay, and if this one doesn't have time, we want it to have the current time. Okay, now after that, if we obtain value for task, date and time, then we can go ahead and create a new task, and we will use the task, the date and then the time, but we will set another property called completed to false and another one called time added to the current date and time. Okay, so that is it. Now afterwards, we added the new task here as the first element to the to-do list using the onShift method. We stored it to the local storage using the set item method, and then we reload the page using the window.location.reload method. But in case we do not get any of these values, it means that one of these conditions were not met, and we will send an alert which says this. Okay, so now let's find out how we can trigger this particular function for a new task to be added to our to-do list. So inside of the HTML, we have this button here called add btn, which is supposed to add the task. Okay, so I'll just copy the class name of this btn right here, and then what I'll do is that I'll fetch it. So const add new task btn equal to document dot query selector into bracket. This 9 should go into bracket, and then we paste the class name right here. Okay, so now I can go ahead and add my event listener. So I'll just fetch the add new task btn, which is this btn that has been created right here, dot add event listener, and the event that I want to listen to is a click event. And once I click on this event, I want to call this function. So I'll copy the function's name from here and then paste it right here. Okay, so now let's see. All right, so I click, it shows. I click add task, it sends in the alert saying provide data for all fields, meaning that everything works perfectly all right. Okay, so we will not bother adding a new task for now. Let's work on using the JavaScript to create this particular element, and afterwards we will display our task inside of it. So let's do just that. Okay guys, so what we are going to do now is to create this entire element using JavaScript. Okay, we will fetch the container in which the task items are displayed in. Then afterwards, we will use JavaScript to create everything inside of the task item, and then we will append it. Okay, so let's do just that. So inside here, I'll create a new function, but before then, let me just give a comment. So create a function to display task. Okay, display task. Okay, and then what will I do now? Let's just have a roadmap. So first of all, fetch the container, which is the to do items container from the HTML. Afterwards, set its default content to empty to emptiness or empty string. Okay, great. Now afterwards, perform a map method on the to-do list. Then for each task in the to-do list, create the task element. Afterwards, append child or children to parents. Then afterwards, append created child to parent to do items container. Okay, so let's do just that. All right, so I'll come inside of the HTML. Now we are done with the form, so we can close it, and then we come here. Now this is the one that we are looking for. Okay, so I'll just copy this one from here, and then inside of the JS I will come here and create the container. So this will be my container, and then I'll use my document.query selector and then paste it right here. And what I'll do is that I'll first of all set the inner HTML to empty string. Okay, like this. So I think this one will just go up here. Now the next thing to do is to perform the map method on the to-do list. Okay, so I'll just call the to-do list right here and then bring in my map method. Now with the map, I'll take two parameters, the to-do or the task and the index. So I'll just get the to-do and the index. Okay, so what am I going to do now? I'm going to start creating the element. So the first element that I will create is the to-do item. Okay, so I'll copy it from here, and inside here, const to-do item equal to document. This time around we are using the create element. Okay, and the element that I wish to create is a div. Okay, now after creating the div, I'll have to add this class name so that it can obtain the styles that we have already set. Okay, so I'll call the to-do item dot class list dot add, and then in a bracket I'll go ahead and add the class name. Okay, so now this one is created. Now the next one to create is this particular icon. Okay, so I'll just copy the class from here. Okay, and then I'll come here inside of the JS. I'll go ahead and create the icon. So const icon equal to document dot create element, and the element I'm going to create is an I. Now I'll go ahead and call this icon dot class list dot add, and what I want to add is these two, but because there are two class names, they must be separated by commas. Okay, so I'll just bring quote here and then comma, and then I'll also bring an opening quote here. Okay, so I'll just save this one. This is done. Now let's look at the next one. The next one is going to be this task container. Okay, so in here I'll create another one, const to do task container and then document dot create element, and this is also a div. Okay, it's a div. Now that I've done this, let's go to do task container dot class list dot add, and then let's add this one like that. Now the next one is to create the task, which is each one element. Okay, so let's come here, const task equal to document dot create element, and this element is an each one, and afterwards I'll call the task dot class list dot add, and then I'll add this one here. Now the next one will be this task details container, so I'll copy this one from here and then I'll create it. Okay, so let's come const task details equal to document dot create element, and this element is also a div. Okay, and afterwards I'll just call the task details dot class list dot add, and then I'll add a class name. Okay, so now the next thing is to create there's two spans, which is the task date and then the task time. So I'll copy this one from here real quick, and then here I will say const task date equal to document dot create element, and this element is a span. This is a span. Afterwards I'll create the task date dot class list dot add, and then I'll add a class list, a class name which is task date. I will duplicate this one. And then change this one to task time, and then I will also change this one to time. Okay, so now what is left? Let's find out. Now we have the delete button, okay, which is the trash. I'll copy this one from here, and then I'll come here and say const delete icon equal to document dot create element, and this element is an icon, so I'll type the I. Afterwards I will get the delete icon. I'll go ahead and set a class list and then add this one. So again, this one, because there are two of them, we have to separate them by comma, so I'll just do this and then do this. Make sure each one of them has its own quote, okay, and they are separated by commas. So now we have finished creating all the elements. Now the next thing we have to do is to set the inner text of the various elements. So for example, when we come here, we have the text for task, the date, and then the time. Okay, so let's do just that. So where is the task? This is the task. I have here, I will set task dot inner text, okay, to this to do dot task. Okay, so to do dot task, okay, like this, and then save. Then I'll come to the task date. Okay, so I'll come here, call the task date dot inner text, and I'll set the inner text to the to do dot date. Okay, then I will also come to the time. Okay, task time. Okay, this one should be task time to avoid any conflict. Task time. I'll just copy this task time here, and then I will put the inner test and set it to do dot time. Okay, now another thing we should take note is that when you look at the original one, the tasks that are completed have this checked icon. Okay, so what we will do is that here, before anything, let's just come here. Let's just come here and say if into bracket to do list dot length is less than 1, meaning there is nothing there, then we can go ahead and set the value of this one to no task added. Okay, else we can set the inner test to an empty string. Okay, so I'll set this one to an empty string, and then I'll push everything I've done here into it. So let me just copy everything from here and move it up. Okay, like this. Great. So let me expand it, and then let's go to it one after the other. So what I'm going to do is that here I want to check if task is completed in order to set the icon. So this is it. Okay, so what I'll do is that if task dot completed, now we are going to use the ternary operator. Okay, so task is completed, then we wish to set the values, but then let me also do this. I will come here, let me just put an empty string here for now. So now let's head back to the font awesome. At the font awesome, I want check. I just type check here, and then the check that I want is this. So I'll click on this one here, click to copy it, and then let me just put it somewhere here. Okay, and then copy the class. Okay, so what we need to do is that first of all, let's just take it back from where we were. Clear this one. Okay, this one must be here, and I'll save. So what I'll do is that the class list aspect. Okay, so the class list. So what I'll do is that if to do dot completed, then I will do this. So I will just copy this one again and then paste it here, and then bring the column here. Okay, so if the task is completed, then I want to have the FA circle check here instead of just the FA circle. So I'll just paste this one here. Don't worry, I'll just walk you through it one more time for a better and clearer understanding. Okay, so now we are done with this one. This one can go. Okay, so I'll just save like this. So now we are done. So let me walk you through it one more time. So we have a function here called display contact. Now inside of this display contact, we fetched a container. So now first of all, we checked if the to-do list is not empty. Okay, now if it has a length less than 1, it means it is empty, and then we will set the content of this container to no task added. Okay, but then if the to-do list has one or more tasks in it, then we will set the initial content of this particular container to empty string. Afterwards, we will perform a map method, and what this map method does is that for every to-do item or for every task inside of the to-do list, create this particular div, okay, and give it a class name of to-do item. Create this icon, and then if the task is completed, give it this class name, otherwise give it this class name. Okay, so let me just go over the icon part again. So we created an icon using the document.createElement method to create the icon, and we say that before we can add the class list or the class name for this particular icon, we have to check if the task is completed, because if the task is completed, we want it to have a different icon. Okay, so if the task is completed, then the class list should be fa circle check. But if the task is not completed, the class list should be fa regular fa circle. Okay, now after that, we created a new container called to do task container, and we added the class name to it. Then we created a task which is an h1 element. We added the class task to it, and then we set its data or its inner text to the task of the to do we are working with. Okay, which is the to do right here. Okay, so for each one of them, if we have 10, it means it will create 10 times this particular element. Okay, so we set the value or the inner text of this task to the task of the to do. Then we created the task details, which contains the task date and then the task times, and then we set their respective data. Okay, so afterwards we created a delete icon. Okay, we created a delete icon, and this delete icon, let me move this one up. We created a delete icon, and then we set the class list of this delete icon to fa solid and then fa trash. Okay, so basically guys, that is what we just did. It's now time for us to append the various child elements to their various parent elements. So now let's see. So when we take a look at the app here, the task and then the task date and task time belong to the same parent, which is the task item. Okay, so let's do just that. Let me just show it from here. As you can see from here, these two spans are children element of the task details. Okay, so let's do the appending. So let's append them. So I'll bring this one here. I will first of all append the task time and then the task date to the task detail. So I'll just copy the task detail and then say dot append into bracket. I want to append the task date followed by the task time. Okay, good. Now the next one is to append this task details and then the task to the task to do task container. So I'll copy the to do task container, and then I will append the task and the task details. Okay, so task details. All right, so afterwards the task details, the task container, the icon and then the delete icon are also children element of the to do item here. So let's do just that. I'll come here and copy the to do item. So this is the to do item. I'll come here and then dot append, and the first thing that I'm going to append is the icon, and then after appending the icon, I'll append the task, the to do task container. After appending the to do task container, I will also append the delete icon. Okay, so delete icon right here. And now I will have to append the to do item to the parent container, which is the container right here. Okay, so I'll come here and say container dot append, and what do I want to append? I want to append the to do item. Okay, like this. Great. So now we are done. This one requires a lot of patience, so I encourage you to take your time and go through it over and over in order to get the understanding. Okay, good. So what then do we do next? We are done with all of this, so I'll just go ahead and clear it. Let me walk you through it one more time. It is very necessary. So we have a function here called display task, and inside this function we fetched a container from the HTML element, which will be the container in which the task will be displayed. Now we check to see if the to-do list is not empty. If it is empty, then we set it in a default value or its inner text to no task added. But then if there are some items inside of the to-do list, we set its initial value to an empty string, because if we do not do it, we will encounter problems. So this part is very important. Now we mapped through the to-do list and we said for every to-do task or for every item inside of the to-do list, we want to create a to-do item container. Afterwards, we assign this class name to it. We want to create an icon. After that, check to see if that particular task is completed. If it is completed, set it class to this, or set it to this. Now create a to-do task container. After creating the container, add these styles, add this class name to it. After that, create an h1 element called task. After that, add this particular class name to it, and then also set its inner text to the to-do.task, which is a property of the task object inside of the to-do list. Okay, now afterwards, create task details container, create the two spans, one for date and one for time, set their values to the to-do.time and then the to-do.date. Okay, afterwards, create a delete icon. Okay, and then add this class name to the delete icon. Afterwards, join the task date and then the task time to the task details. Afterwards, join the task and then the task details to the to-do task container. Afterwards, join the icon, the to-do task container, and then the delete icon to the to-do item, and finally append the to-do item to the container. Okay, so now it's left with how we will trigger this function once it is called. And how do we do it? We want this thing to be called once the page is fully loaded. Okay, so what do I do now? I'll just call the window property and set it to the onload, and once this window is fully loaded, I want to call the display task. Okay, so that is it. Now let's see. Boom, and now we say we have no task because of course we have not added any task yet. Okay, so let's add a new task here. Let's say go to the gym, and then I would like to go to the gym today. I would like to go to the gym around 9:30. Okay, so 9:30 a.m. and now I'll add. Okay, so as you can see, go to the gym is right there. Okay, now let me just quickly to show that this ternary operator that we did right here, this one, to show that this one worked, I will come back to this particular add task and then set the default value to true. Okay, I'll set the default value to true and I'll add a new task. So this new task will say subscribe to Web Chrony Online, and I would like to do this one today. I also like to do it today. Okay, and then I will add, and then okay, now we don't have the strike through, right? So what we need to do is that we will come here, what we will do is that the task will be striked through. Okay, so how do I do it? Inside of the display task, immediately after the task, which is this one, okay, I will say to do dot completed and task dot style dot test decoration equal to line through. Line through, like this. Okay, what's going on here? To do the completed. Okay, then we use, if this one will not work, let's set this one to empty, something like this. Okay, now this worked. Okay, now that we have bracket here, I think I should just use the end, and it should work just fine. Okay, so if the task is completed, we want a line through the task. Okay, so now let's see, and boom, we have it right there. Now let me add a new task. Let's say call my mom. Okay, and set the date to, let's say, tomorrow, and the time to, let's say, 8:30 p.m. in the evening. Now when I add, as you can see, it has different icons and there is a line through it, and because we are using the local storage, everything is persisted. Okay guys, so now that we have done this, let's work on deleting tags from the to-do list. Still inside of the map method of this particular display tags function, what I'll do is that I will fetch this delete icon and then add an event listener to it. Okay, in the meantime, let me create the function up here. So I'll say delete task. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'll create this function and call it delete task. Okay, and this task will take index as a parameter. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'll have to first of all confirm. Okay, so I'll just bring a condition and say if confirm into a bracket, this operation will delete task from your to-do list. Click OK to continue or cancel. Okay, so that is it. Let me just make the correct spellings of this, and what I'm going to do that if this is confirmed, I will delete it. Okay, so I will call the to-do list and I'll use the splice method. And what do I intend to splice? I intend to splice the index, and how many tags do I want to delete is just one. Okay, now after that I'll have to store the updated to-do list in the local storage. Okay, so I'll come here and say local storage dot set item, and the name is to do one, and the data I wish to store must be stringified first, so I'll bring in my json.stringify, and the data is to do list, like this. Okay, so now this function has been created successfully. All I need to do is to invoke it here. So inside of the display task, in the map method, I'll come here and then fetch my delete icon. Okay, so let me just here and say add event listener to delete icon. Okay, so I'll call my delete icon dot add event listener. The event I wish to listen to is a click event, And once this is triggered, I would like to fire this function, but because it has a parameter, I'll paste the name of the function here, and I'll pass the index as its arguments. Okay, so now let's have a look at the function one more time. And then so the function called delete task here has a parameter of index, and the first thing is that we have to confirm, because someone might click it by accident, so we have to confirm. And if this is confirmed, what we will do is that we will delete the task with that particular index, and we will store the updated version of the to-do list inside of our local storage, and afterwards we have to reload the page. So I'll set the window dot location dot reload and call it like this. Okay, so now it's time for us to test it. So for example, if I click on this icon, it says this operation will delete tasks from your to-do list. Click OK to continue or cancel. So once I click OK, let me refresh. Okay, it has been removed. Let me see. Okay, it's supposed to be location, not local storage. So location, I will save it right here and come back here. Now I don't want to go to the gym anymore, so I'll click here, and once I click OK, the task is deleted. Okay, great. So it's time for us to change the status of a task, whether it is completed or not. Don't go away. Okay guys, so still inside of the JavaScript file, I will come here and create a new function. So it says update task completion. Okay, so I'll create a function here called complete task, and it will also take the index, okay, as a parameter. And what I'm going to do is that this one too must be confirmed, so I'll bring in my condition if confirm into bracket. Let's say this operation will change the completion status of task. Click OK to continue or cancel. I'll now come here and execute. So what do I want to execute? So I'll create a new variable called task, which is the current task we wish to change its completion. So we will use the bracket notation to fetch this particular task using the index. So I'll call the to-do list, bring my square bracket, and then put the index here. Now the only thing that I wish to change is to change its task completion. So I'll just say task dot completed equal to, I'll just flip it, okay, so that if it is true it will be false, if it is false it will be true. Okay, so I'll bring the not and then the task dot completed, okay, like this. So what is happening here is that after confirming, we fetch this particular task using the bracket notation, and once we get it, we want to set the task dot completed to the opposite of its current state. So if it is true, this one will turn it to false, and if it is false, this one will turn it to true. Okay, so that is it. And afterwards, I will store the updated version inside of the local storage. So let's do that. We say local storage dot set item, and the name is to do one, and we stringify it first. So JSON dot stringify, and we stringify the updated to-do list. Okay, so we put it right here and save, and afterwards we have to reload the page. Okay, so window dot location dot reload, and boom. Okay, so I'll just copy the function name and still inside of the display task in the map, I will want to add it to this particular icon. So where is it? this is the icon. Okay, so I'll come here and say add event listener to icon. So I'll call the icon dot add event listener, and I want to listen to a click event. And once this is called, I would like to fire this particular function and serve the index as its argument. Okay, so now let's see. Now here I click, it says this operation will change the completion status of task. Click OK to continue or cancel. So once I click OK, now the task completion status have changed. As you can see, the icon changed. There is no longer a strike through, but then if I click it again, the option comes, I click OK, now there is a strike through. Now let me create a new task. Let's say publish video. And when do I want to do it? I want to do it tomorrow. At what time? Let's say tomorrow by 6:40, and then I'll add task. Okay, now the problem here is that we have set the default value of the completed to true. Now let's change it to false. Okay, so now back here, once I click on it and click OK, now the task completion is set to false, and once I click again and click OK, now the task completed property is set to true. Okay, yeah, so I want us to pay attention to something here. As you can see from here, we have been calling this particular method here. We have also called it here. We have called it here. Okay, so instead of just repeating this code, we can just create a separate function for it, and then we reuse it. Okay, so let's do just that. So I'll come up here, and then I will say create a function for storing data to the local storage. Okay, so let's do just that. So I'll create a function called save to local storage. Okay, and this function will take in the data. Okay, so I'll just come here and say that local storage dot set item, and the name is to do 1, and the value is JSON dot stringify. We stringify the data. Okay, so now what is going to happen is that each time we want to store this one, we just have to invoke this function and pass the data as a parameter. Okay, so for example, with the adding of a new task, I will just comment out this one. I'll call this function and then pass the to-do list as a parameter. Okay, so this is it right here, and then here I'll also comment out this, and instead I'll put this one here and the to-do list. Okay, then here too I'll just comment out this one, and then I'll paste this one. Oops, this one is supposed to be save to local storage, so I'll just copy this one. I think they all have the same name, so I will paste this one here, and yeah, I think that is it. Okay, so instead of retyping the whole code, we have created it into a function. Okay, this is the function, and we are only reusing it. Okay, so now let's see. So now I click here, I'll say go to the market, and what time do I wish to go to the market? Let's say on Saturday. I want to go around 9:45. Okay, when I click, now it still works. Okay, Now when I click here and click OK, it still works. I click here, I click OK, it still works. I click here, I click OK, it still works. Okay, so guys, let me know what you think of this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. If I remember, I will put the source code of this particular video into the description. Thank you very much for sticking with me to the very end. I hope you enjoyed it. Kindly leave a like on this video if you did, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't. Until we meet again, peace out.